Hi, and welcome back to another episode in our special series of Leading Well-Being on the Check-In podcast, where um, we're talking about total well-being at work, at home, at school. And in this series, we're talking with community builders, leaders, and educators. Today's guest is Kerry-Ann. Kerry-Ann, welcome, and thank you for participating in our conversation here.
Thank you for having me, Nelson.
Kerry-Ann, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Sounds good. Well, hello, everybody. It is so nice to meet you all virtually. I'm Kerry-Ann Douglas-Powell. My pronouns are she and her. I am the Director of Workplace Culture at OCAD University, Ontario's largest art and design institution. And I have the pleasure of leading a team that is responsible for employee learning and development, for labor and faculty relations, for organizational well-being, and then also for organizational change and transformation. And so it's a big portfolio, lots of work, lots of words that go along with it. But it's really about how do we find ways and places to make those that are at OCAD University feel that they are belonging or that they belong, that they are valued, they are heard, and they are seen. And so it's a big job, but I'm up for the challenge, and so is my team.
Nice, awesome. So, number one question: what does total well-being at work mean to you?
That's a great question, Nelson. So for me, total well-being at work means that, for me, the list has the luxury of working Monday to Friday at 9 to 5, is that I have the ability that, or when anybody has the ability to roll out of bed on a Monday morning, that they are excited to go to work, not dreading what it means to walk up to the office, not dreading getting into their car or getting onto transit or getting their kids ready, that they find meaning and purpose in everything that they're doing. For me, it also means that, when there are hard times, that folks know that they are being supported because not everything is going to be hunky dory. And as much as I am an optimist, I do know that life is hard. And so it's the fact that folks are able to come into work or not, because and feel comfortable calling in sick, tells me that I have a healthy or well-being workplace. And so for me, that's what it means. It means being able to want to come to work, and also know that it's okay that when you are not able to do so, that you are in a safe environment or a brave environment that allows for you to call in sick.
And can you share one thing that your organization does, big or small, that supports the total well-being of the staff?
Oh, I'm gonna go on a limb here and say that we have more than one. We have a few, and I think it's for me, it's really about and for me, I guess, and my leadership team because they also help support this. It's a multitude of things. So for us, it's really about a system. It's being able to offer things like an employee family assistance program that supports all aspects of life. So looking at supports for family care, legal care, financial care. If somebody needs to have access to a counselor, we have the ability to do that, and for various cultural areas. I think for us, the program is a great program, but the bigger challenge is encouraging folks to use it and whether or not people feel comfortable enough using it. I try to tell my stories and how many times I've called them for various things. But again, it doesn't mean that just because I'm out there preaching to folks that here are some of the things that we have that they are comfortable using the services without and comfortable knowing the fact that we don't have any access to what it is that they say when they call the hotline or they leverage any of these services. Um, Outside of that, we also talk about being able to access a wellness fund. And so we have for all of our faculty, administrative staff, and managers, we have access to a wellness fund that resets annually, that folks use for alternative services. They can use it for counseling, they can use it for massages, they can use it for therapists, psychotherapy, various other avenues. And so they would just submit their receipts and we would reverse them up until whatever that total dollar amount is. We also really encourage our faculty and staff or practically our faculty and managers to access things like coaching. So we do have, a roster of coaches that folks can ask, and if they can't ask, they can find them, and we can support them through their professional development fund. And so there are a multitude of ways including a peer mentoring strategy. So again, not everybody in the institution, not especially for our students, do not have access to mentors or know, uh, or they're looking for mentors that are within the same vicinity. And so we have the ability to match them up through a peer mentoring program that is still underway. And I think for our faculty and staff, that program should be launching, I'm going to say earlier or later this year. We just need to do some training on what that actually means and what it means to be a peer mentor when you are sitting within a faculty or a leadership position. And finally, we in 2022, OCADU launched a mindfulness program, well, for both students and then also for faculty and staff as well. And so 40 folks within the faculty and staff complement are now trained mindfulness coach practitioners. And so again, just having a robust system that's in place, like I will tell anybody in any conversation, although we have, I'm going to say, several ways or means for folks to access care or access wellness strategies, it does not mean that people are actually using them.
Mhm.
And so our goal for the next few months is really to figure out how to get folks more comfortable with being able to access things that we already provide to them. And then also, how do we not only allow for them to have access to these programs, but if there are needs for them to step away from the office or from the workplace, it's great for them to step away. But how do we reintegrate them back into the system when they come back? And so, we do have things that are underneath the employee standards agreement, the ESA, that require for us to allow for folks to take, they could take 6 weeks or 18 weeks off for care, short-term disability, long-term disability. And so, yes, when you do that, that's great, but then you still have to come back to the office. And so, how do we support you when we do that?
Mhm. Yeah, I know from my own personal history when, I had gone to see so many different doctors, and I had this thing on my phone, which was a work app, and it was a benefit through work. And it was, I can't remember the name right now, but it was something like Dial a Nurse kind of thing.
Hmm.
Anyhow, I went into it, blah, blah, blah. I was talking to a nurse within a couple of hours, but the beautiful thing about it was I was able to talk to someone who was listening, who didn't have like a room full of patients, behind me. And through our conversation, she said, I would go to your family doctor and do a vertigo test. And I was
Hmm.
like, vertigo? And I went, and turns out, yeah, I had vertigo in combination with all these other things that I was going through. So I know EAP usage is low right across the country, and I think even globally. But in Canada, I think it's under 10% of the benefits get utilized, and yeah, so it's part of our mission now is to say, hey, if you have it, use it, because
Yeah.
it is such a benefit to everybody to be able to use that. So what's one challenge that you faced as a leader when it comes to supporting your team's well-being?
I think the biggest challenge that I have is because we are 100% in a fast-paced moving world where the demands or has traditionally demanded everything all at once, is the ability for my team and the teams around us to step away. And step away being like, it's okay for you to step away. I think, it's this perception that if I step away, the work is going to pile up. And 100% it is. Like we have very small teams. And so we're not saying the work is not going to pile up, but it's knowing the fact that it is just still okay, but you take care of yourself, number one, first, and then everything else we will figure out at the end. I think, we have created this I don't know, this world where everybody's competing. There's always competing priorities, or everybody's competing against each other. It's like we've created this world where folks wear a pin or take pride in the fact they've never taken a sick day. And I thought, coming out of the pandemic, and I wasn't with OCAD before the pandemic, but I'm sure it's not any different than any other organization. I had hoped coming out of the pandemic that folks would realize like what's really important, whether it's family, it's family care, self-care, taking care of your friends, your pets, or whomever, or whatever, that we would prioritize that a little bit more. And I find that, as the days get further and further from lockdown, we're moving back into this rat race. And so the question really is like, how do we create a space where folks know that that yes, it's okay to take that vacation, right? You do not have to get a payout of your vacation balance. It's okay for you to take that day off. It's okay for you to call in sick. It's okay for you to start to drive to work and realize, hey, maybe this is not the day that I want to be in the office and I want to turn my car around and I need to call my manager to say, I'm not coming in, like, those are all super important things, and it's things that I just don't think that we as a society, or even as an institution are fully there yet. We're not fully, appreciating the fact that we all, face a multitude of things before we even get into the office, and so if we're not taking care of ourselves, if we're not taking care of our families, if we're not in that headspace, that, too is coming into the office with us, and we're showing up, sure, as physically, but we're not really showing up in a mentally in a way that is going to be productive or is going to be effective for us or even healthy for us.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. I know we can measure absenteeism, but how do we measure presenteeism? Which is a real thing of people going through life challenges and what have you, but showing up to work, but not being at, like, I guess they're at work, but they're not
They're not
doing.
really there. Yeah, they're not at work. Like they're at work physically, but they're not mentally at work.
Yeah,
And and it's not like you can tell. And so, sometimes people will say, well, yeah, sure, they're going through the motions. They're still doing the work, but it's that mental effort. And I can't see how many times in your head you're replaying something that happened to you. And I'm asking you to pull a report for me that's to me is a click of a button, right? To me, it's like, oh, can you pull this report for me and it's super easy and I'm waiting and I'm tapping my fingers or hopefully it's not me doing that, but somebody's tapping their fingers being like, why isn't the report yet? What we can't see though is the fact that that person is replaying an interaction that they had with maybe it was with their spouse or maybe it was with their children before leaving the work or the bus, the interaction they had on the bus or the fact that their, pants are wet or their shoes are wet or whatever. And it's taking them now 30 minutes to even get to that report because they're still trying to sort through whatever it is that's happening, in their head. And so, yeah, I think it's just being more mindful of people in the spaces that we are in.
so we talked about everybody else. How does Carrie Ann recharge her batteries?
Oh, I am known to be the one that will step away very loudly. So I am a big fan of the Toronto Blue Jays. Sorry, I'm a big fan of Toronto Blue Jays, and the Raptors. I love Toronto teams, also the Leafs, but I watch them on TV. I make it a habit to go to games, and I will go to games very loudly and very proudly. And so during this season that we had, um, they were hosting. I think it was Wednesday work from the dome days, and I was like, "This is it." And so I would say to folks, I'm here, at 3 o'clock, peace out, y'all. You can't find me. I'm gonna, I'm done. I'm gonna go to the dome. I'm not working from the dome, but I'm gonna go to the dome and I'm gonna watch the Blue Jays. And so I think, you find subtle ways to demonstrate the fact that what you're saying, you actually believe it and you're doing it. I think at the beginning I said I work 9 to 5. I work a 9 to 5. I don't work 9 to 5. For me, my brain works better after 10 a.m. And so I'm actually a 10 to 7 or 10 to 6 or 11 to 7 at worker and it's a different time slot than anybody else. In my office, they are usually earlier workers and that's fine. But it works better for me. I can show up and be at work and do the work that I need to do and be able to not have to fight traffic, not be stuck, I'm going to say waiting for the gardener. I commute in from Brampton, so waiting for the highways to clear up. And so, that is it. And when I come in, it's a high and I get into that work. It doesn't mean that I can't start work or look at my inbox before I leave my house. I do all those things, so I'm mentally prepared to get into it. But outside of that, here are my rituals. I shower twice a day because for me, the shower is like the thing that clears my mind. And much to the chagrin of my walls, probably, I will also line my walls with lemongrass or eucalyptus oil or whatever it is in order to set that tone. And that's kind of, my daily ritual. And then in the evenings when I come home, I have I have a habit. It's a habit. It's been for years now, and that is to eat Genoa salami and cheese. And so I'm a huge Parmesan eater. I love Parmesan. Anybody that knows me will they can give me a piece of Parmesan and I'll be happy. Or to take white cheddar. And somebody recently, actually, I'm totally going to put a plug, and you don't really put a plug for folks, but Isle of Man is like my new favorite cheese. It's like another white cheddar cheese. And so it is definitely like a go-to for me. And so those are the things that I find joy in. I think behind me, oh no, he left. I have a dog. I go for walks, and so that also helps me with my reset of things, and just being able to go out into nature. And then I also love vacations. I'm also one of those people that do the vacation countdown. And so every year I try to have a pick a place or a space that I can go to and just enjoy out of my bucket list of things. And so last year it was Thailand. This year, in June, I went to Jasper, and I went to the hot springs, and it was fantastic. And so, yeah, it's nice. It's nice to be able to find that rebalance, and you find refreshed and renewed, and you come back and you're like off to the races again. But those are things that are super important to me. And then I think the other piece that I've been telling everybody that I talk to is ensuring the fact that you have I call it my tribe. And so I have my set of folks that I talk to. Each of them have come to me with, not come to me, I go to them either collectively or individually, based on what it is that I'm going through. And they all come with different expertise, and they all have these honest moments with me. And then, finally, I am religious. And so I do go to church on Sundays. And that, again, is like my reconnection with God between my prayers during the week. And then being able to sit in service and do worship is another phenomenal way for me to relax and recharge. And so those are my things.
No, that's an amazing routine you've set out for yourself. Um, if your team could describe your leadership in one or two words, how would you like to be remembered when you announce the retirement date?
Oh, I would hope that my team would say I was supportive. Um, I think, I wish I could say it was empathetic, but that would be lying. I'm not fully there yet. I am working on it. I'm a work in progress. But one of the things that I 100% do is I with my team is I try to show up and meet them where they are at. Whether that means that I need to have honest conversations with them. I embrace them for their expertise and experience that they bring to the table. Um, really showcasing the work that they are working on or doing. I try to support them when it comes to recognizing just the pressure that we have. So we are in human resources. We are the last people to take care of ourselves. Everybody, knows that, this profession is a hard profession. People bring you all of their problems. You see everything. And sometimes you also have to make some really unpopular decisions in our work. And so just being able to be that ear, I think for me though, one of the things is I'm a fixer, and so one of the things that we're also trying to work at on my end of the house is knowing how they want me to show up. And so quite often in the conversation that we have before we even open the door, it's like, tell me, what role am I playing today? Am I trying to solution it? Am I trying to create space? Am I trying to help you problem solve? Am I trying to bounce ideas off with you? And so would say that my legacy, hopefully, will be one as being a supportive manager or a supportive leader.
Yeah, I can't help but think of, excuse me, something that's known as situational leadership. And
Hmm.
sometimes, and one of my previous guests had mentioned, like during the epidemic and COVID, that he had to lead from the front. He had to bring his team behind, with him. And sometimes you walk with your team, and sometimes you let the team walk ahead of you. And it's just knowing what space to be in, when, and how, right? And all of them super important and supportive. So, bonus question is, what gives you hope about the future of leadership and workplace well-being?
I think the fact that we're having this conversation today, and the fact that people are going to be listening to this podcast is what gives me hope. Um, One of the things that I will always, tell anybody is that I grew up in an organization or an organization community, in organizations and community, I'm going to say, that have always been supportive, that have always encouraged us to have these conversations, to have the hard conversations, to sit down and talk about, what is going on, and not just like, how are you, but how are you really doing? And how are you navigating whatever is happening, and I think that for me, being able to have conversations, specifically for me, being able to have conversations about grief, and being able to have conversations about how do I show up as a Black female leader in an academic space that is not necessarily always kind, to racialized folks, and being able to walk that walk and have that deeper conversation, that tells me that there is hope in where we are headed. One of the things that is super special about this week and having this conversation this week is this is also the week that my brother passed away in 2021. And one of the things that I've been saying to folks is if I didn't have a leadership team or if I didn't have the supports that I'd had at the time, in my own team at the time, I wouldn't necessarily be here today. And so I know what it looks like when you have a community of folks around you that are rallying for you. I know what it looks like when people are checking in on you. I know what it looks like when people are asking the tough questions or when things are shoved or appearing at your door because they know that you're struggling. I'm like, that's what's meaningful to me. And the fact that we have workplaces that still do these things where they get together and galvanize this community when somebody's struggling, that gives me hope because we don't need to walk this on this earth alone, and nor shall we. And so the question is, are we willing to be able to reach out for help? And are we able to accept the help when it is given to us or offered to us?
Yeah. I I'm sorry about your brother. I lost my dad in February this past year. And
Mm,
I know without a doubt that if it were not for them, and we talked earlier before we started recording about the men in capillary wave, that and the things that I've learned and I've put into my daily routines, that I would not be having this conversation with you, you know. But it gives it one of the things that was said to me, and I'll carry it with me for the rest of my life, is one of the gentlemen that comes to our support groups. He said, "You know what, Nelson, you've carried us. Now it's our turn to carry you."
yeah.
I don't want to end this conversation in tears, but they would
Yes,
be
we
happy
do.
tears.
They're
They,
fine.
they would be happy tears. Um, and yeah, I don't, a quick little story that's not really part of the podcast series, but it, the a morning, let's say a couple months ago, I woke up just feeling heavy in the chest. Right, you just wake up sad, and I went to the couch and I was just sitting there, and I was actually holding back, the emotion, and then finally I said, "Screw it," so I just started crying. Right, um, and I think the women have had it right for a lot of years when they say, I just need a good cry. I
Yeah.
never understood what that really meant until that very moment where when I had that emotional release, then I was able to move on with my day, and I had a really good day. I truly know that it's because that I released that emotion. The grief will always be with me. The memories of my dad will always be with me, right? And it's okay to hold it in the moment, but
Yeah.
not to carry it, through your days, kind of thing, right? So
And it's the joys, Nelson. I think for me, it's the joys and the gift. And people say to me all the time, they're like, "You're so joyful." Like we would never have known. Like we would never have known if we didn't know you, or we, for the folks that that do know me. Um, Say, I don't understand, like, how because he was the center of my world for, he's 30, he was 30 when he passed, I was 40 when he passed, and we're 10 years apart, and we were super tight and super bonded, and so folks say, "I just don't understand, like, how are you doing so well?" I'm like, "I'm doing well because I know that he's at peace, and I know that he's with me no matter what it is that I do." And I think for me that that's what's meaningful is that still being able to honor the individual, to honor the lessons, and to really, provide that space or the ability for me to do the things that he wasn't able to do or isn't able to do or not able to experience. It gives me that extra, like, I'm gonna say, uh, joyful bump in my step. And so, yeah, I think, life throws us lemons and we definitely make lemonade out of it. And the question is like, what are people willing to do? It doesn't mean that everybody goes through grief in the same manner. And so I recognize that, but I also hold on to the fact that, as I said before, I'm spiritual. It's also the fact that God doesn't give me more than I can handle, and 100% every time I see something exciting come out about type 1 diabetes, I'm thrilled because I'm like, he is 100% up there moving things. It's like a puzzle, and he's still around. And whenever he thinks that we're not thinking about him, something will pop up, a song will pop up, a bird will appear, or something, and you're like, hey, he's making his presence known.
Mm.
And so I think for me, it's that comfort. But again, it's also knowing that on the hard days, because I do have hard days that are grief fraught days. Again, kind of going back to the organizations that we try to have, is that I have that space to be able to say, hey, look, you know what? Today isn't the day. It's not the day for me to show up. I don't need to be Kerry-Ann Douglas-Powell, the strong person. I can just come up and be, or I can call in sick and want to sit in front of my TV with a tea and my dog and a sweater and a comforter, and just call it a day. And so I think that that's a luxury. It is a luxury, and it's a privilege that I have, and it's one that I recognize that a lot of people don't. And my question really is like, how do we make sure or ensure the fact that, all organizations are able to do that for folks? And so that is our goal.
That's the goal. Let's do it. Kerry-Ann, thank you so much for joining, participating, helping, and spreading the word. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to meet you.
You as well, Nelson, and thank you to those that are listening or that are still a part of this call, because I know, it's always interesting when you're like, I don't know who this person is. And she doesn't have a book like everybody else does. And so
Thank
but
you.
yeah, no, I hope that you and your listeners have a fantastic rest of the day, or whenever it is that you are listening to this. And I wish that you all have the ability to show up as well.